A basic concept in project management is the iron triangle. The iron triangle describes the relationship between scope, time, and resources in project management. Basically, these three must be in a harmonic relation for your project to succeed and for you to be able to lead or execute your project to expectations. Now, why is it called an iron triangle? Because it is a strict relationship between these three variables, meaning that you can pick any two, but those two determines the third. If you fix the scope and fix the time, then you need to adjust your resources to cover that scope in a given time. If you fix the scope and resources, then time is determined by these two. If you fix time and resources, then scope is determined by these two, at least in the sense that it is determined how big, how meaningful, how impactful project you can do. This is typically the case with agile projects. In the agile framework, time and resources are fixed, and you have a roadmap for the scope, and you realize the part which can be covered within the given time frame with the particular resources you have. Now, picking any two is pretty good, isn't it? So you still have a room to maneuver, because if you want to do your projects quick, then you just set the time and set the scope, and it determines the resources, but at least you can do it in the given time. Yes, but so it is also a triangle, because if the sides of the triangle are in balance, then you can cover a large area with the same amount of, with the same length of each side. If they are imbalanced, for example, you have plenty of time, but you have meager resources, then your triangle will be very, very narrow. So if you consider, take the area of the triangle as the quality of the project, then to cover the same area, you need a lot more time than you expected if your resources are scarce. Why? Because there are trade-offs. You can replace resources with time or time with resources. You can add more people to the same project so you can execute it quicker, or you can let more time for the same team to make a better job. But it is not the same as if you have resources and time in balance. Why? Because for a particular scope you need a certain a group of people with a certain set of competence, and they can work at a certain cadence. which is something like an optimal rate of work what they can sustain for a long period of time. If the scope is big and your resources are scarce, and you just let them cover the same scope within a longer period of time, it may take longer for them because for example, if you need to lift a heavy object and you have 2 people to do it, then they just grab it and go. If you only have 1 person to do it, then he or she needs to figure out how to move that object as they cannot just lift it and take it and go. They need some device to move it. They need to figure out how to do it with less resources. So it is not like doing it the same way but a little slower. Similarly, if you cut time in half and you say that, okay, I allocate twice as many people to the project, they still need to communicate, coordinate between each other. They still need to break down the task. They still need to figure out how to do something. And it takes time, and if you add more people to the team, you also add more communication lines. You also increase complexity. And if you increase complexity, you just need more time to do the same thing. So there is always a trade-off. This is not a linear relationship. There is an optimum mix of resources and time to carry out a project, to execute a project of a given scope. There is one more thing. Resources are not the same. There is one particular group of resources which differs from anything else, and it is very hard to replace it without heavy trade-offs, and that is human resource. Why? Because you cannot buy knowledge. You can hire people who know that stuff if they are available on the market. If not, you can train people. You can train people with potential. Maybe if they have some related training or experience before, then it takes less time, but it still takes time to train them. And who will train these people? Who will train the new members? Well, existing members of the team. So if you need to add more people to a project because you cut the time in half, that means that you need to find people with adequate competencies. Probably if you have several projects at hand, you can just reallocate them from other projects, but then those projects will suffer. And if you want to train, if you need to train people because you don't have the adequate people with the adequate background or adequate experience or competence, then you just need time to do that. And you just need to reallocate precious resources from your existing team to train new members. Now, training can also be interpreted in a different sense. So maybe new members have the right professional competence, but they are still new. So they need to. I used to say they need to find the restroom and the canteen at the organization so they can fit in. And there is also team dynamics. So you have an established team. They already figured out how they can work together, who fills what role, and then you add new members with new set of complexity, set of goals, set of personal attitude, and you just need to readjust your team. So they need some time to figure out how they work together in this new setting. So what you can do if you lack resources? Well, there is not much. You need either carve, scrap everything you can from the scope of your projects. I mean, you need to define some sort of minimal solution which still fulfills the needs of your customer, but you need to get rid of everything extra. You need to get rid of everything with a low value added. That way you can decrease the need for resources, and you can decrease the need for time as well. If you can't do that, and if you force your team to complete a project within a limited time, which is not enough for the correct execution, then, well, what's in the middle of the iron triangle? What the area of iron triangle represents? It is your quality. So if you don't provide the resources and time needed for that particular scope, then quality suffers. Sometimes you can tolerate a quality loss. Sometimes you can tolerate some errors. Sometimes you can get away with a less ideal solution. But often the errors you make will backfire later. So if you let quality decrease because you don't have the adequate resources and you don't allocate the time needed for correct execution, you just add to your problems. In your next projects or in the same projects down the road later, these errors will come back and backfire, and you will need to spend time to correct these mistakes. You will need to spend time to deal with everything left behind. And sometimes you will need to do it in the worst moment possible. So if you have scarce resources, then and you can foresee that you will have scarce resources in the long run, then there is no point in buying time by letting quality decrease or letting quality drop, because you will need that time to correct these errors later. Then the best policy, the best strategy is to focus on quality and maybe skip or drop some projects or project ideas and reduce scope to the absolute minimum. But what's left in this reduced scope must be realized in a quality manner. This is the only way you can reduce the amount of time spent on errors, spent on bad legacy design, and spent on additional work not closely related to the scope of the projects, but coming from your operational environment later down the road. So this is the only way you can slowly reduce the amount of work you need to do. This is especially true if your organization struggles with scarce resources, but if you look at other organizations as benchmarks, then they can do the same with the amount of resources you have. Because that means that they had the opportunity to do quality work before, so they don't have the same errors to deal with. They don't have the same legacy to deal with. That can be the only way. If your team is competent and your resources just equal, approximately equal the amount of resources of your benchmarks, then the only differentiating factor can be your past. Can be your past mistakes, past situations, maybe not even mistakes or errors, but some legacy applications, legacy systems, legacy solutions you still need to deal with, and making your life more difficult. But this is the only way. Focus on quality. Maybe do less at first, and progress a little more slowly, but don't leave another errors and other legacy obstacles behind.